My name is Vince Bruno. Welcome to 1 Million Cups Peoria. We meet every Wednesday morning here at 7:30 to learn about something new and exciting going on in our community. Is anybody here for the very first time ever? Yeah, I saw some new faces. Hey. Congratulations. Okay, so we grow pretty organically by getting the word out mouth to mouth. We do have a little bit of website and online appeal and things like that. But I'm going to ask you to take your phones out at a presentation, right, which is bizarre. Send a tweet or a Facebook or Instagram or MySpace if you want to notification that you're here. Check in. Tell people that you want them to come. I used to do this every single week, and I got out of the habit, but I think some people have come because of me. So tell people that you're here so we can get the crowd bigger and bigger and bigger. A couple of announcements before we start today, and I had to write them down. We've got Key Start competition applications are open and ready to be filled out. So if you know somebody or have a startup business of your own that could use 10 grand, it's a lot of money be thrown around. Go online and fill in your Key Start application at startuppeoria.com. It's on there somewhere. Second announcement is every Wednesday at the Nest, they have free open co-working, so you can go up to the Nest and work amongst other like minds and meet some new friends and get some things done for free. Find out that you like it, probably eventually sign up because that seems to be the trend these days. Thirdly, First Mid is a sponsor of Startup Peoria now, and they sent their most good-looking representative, Chad Truelove, here in the corner, and he bought coffee. So if you paid for coffee, you missed out on that deal. So he's buying coffee for the masses. So thank Chad when you get a chance.
Yeah, also I just want to point out that First Mid is actually the first ever program sponsor for Startup Peoria. It's super exciting. So because of them that we can do things like 1 Million Cups, Key Start, and keep the Nest alive.
Yeah, so thank you,
big thank
Chad
you
and First Mid.
And also Chad just bought coffee out of the good of his heart.
So thank you for that too.
Cool, thanks.
Without further ado, we have Erik Christian here today telling us all about his, well, it's called hrFIT. That gives away a little. He'll give away the rest. Erik, you ready to rock?
Ready.
Here we go.
All right. Thanks, Vince.
Mm-hmm. Woo, Erik.
Thank you. Woo. Good morning. It's great to be here, and I'm glad to see so many engaged people. You got to come to a 7:30 meeting like wanting it, you know, like you guys want to be here. So that's nice. It's nice to not just have a captive audience. My name is Erik Christian, and I am with hrFIT. It's a human resources consulting and outsourcing firm. And what do? hrFIT makes employers stronger. How do we do that? We focus on their people processes. And you guys are business folks, one sense or another, and so you really know that what it really boils down to is businesses are a collection of processes. What do you do? Why do you do it? How well do you do that over and over, right? HR is no different. So what hrFIT does is come in and we work with employers of all different types and sizes to try to figure out how to make their people processes work better. That makes them stronger, makes them run more efficiently, keeps them out of hot water, ideally, right? So let me tell you a couple stories, and I think this will help illustrate the point. Now, these are real hrFIT clients, but we've changed the names. Protect the guilty as it goes. Terry and her husband have just bought a small company in West Central Illinois. Got about 15 employees. Her husband used to work for the company. Now he's the president. He's out and about doing his thing, visiting clients, prospecting, traveling the world, that kind of thing. She's, as the vice president, back home, keeping the home fires burning at the ranch, as it were, so doing all the books. I mean, she also gets all the fun employee issues that come up. The things that she, in her words, says are like story problems, and she hates story problems. You know, I don't want to try to figure out how to do this accrual balance, Erik. I don't want to try to figure out how to fix this situation where the manager told the employee this thing, but the handbook says the other thing. How do we fix this? So what Terry does is she picks up the phone and calls Erik. And hrFIT helps her come up with a solution that's good for her business and that's also good for the employees. She does that whenever she needs, and so that's one of the main services. On-call HR support for those folks who don't really need a full-time HR staff member. They just need help right now. Don't make me spend all the time researching it and then give me the peace of mind knowing I got the right answer instead of something I guessed at. Let me tell you a second story. This one's about Pete. Pete is a bright guy. Pete has his own engineering firm. They are a contractor to a large manufacturer here in town, right? A few years ago, Pete had about 10 employees. Now Pete has over 40 people on the payroll. So Pete is doing something right? But Pete is an engineer. Pete is not a manager necessarily. Pete is not an HR professional. And now his staff is getting big enough that he's got managers under him. He's got people in different locations in different states, and he knows enough to know that he doesn't know everything. He knows that there are several other HR components out there. Maybe there's laws that kick in at certain numbers of employees, which is true. Maybe there's laws that are changing all the time that he's not aware of, which is also true. And there's also just a capacity issue where Pete isn't really sure how he's going to keep his hands on all these different moving parts. He needs some strategies. Pete hooks up with hrFIT, and now we're essentially his outsourced HR department. Pete and I sit down. We did an assessment, strategized what's the most important stuff that he needs to know about, what are the things he's got to fix right now, the stuff that's on fire that we got to put out, and then what are the things we're going to do over the next 12 to 18 months to make his business stronger. We're getting handbooks together, job descriptions, training up his management staff, so it's all aligned to his mission, heading in the right direction. So let me tell you a third story. This one's about Ann. Ann is an HR director for local government. They've got an HR staff. They've had one for a really long time, very established, but Ann, in addition to being very smart, very hardworking, is also very overworked and only has the capacity to do so much. All right? She's also got a department that is sorely in need of some management training and a revised hiring process. And we're talking local government here, so there's a lot of eyeballs on it. There's a lot of people who have a vested interest in making sure this thing works the way that it should. So Ann knows that she can't tackle it herself. She also knows that a third-party perspective is going to help her out. So she contacted hrFIT. We went through a process of evaluating their interview and hiring process, trained up her managers on how best to use the process, legal and effective interviewing techniques, and we also came up with an interview assessment tool that aligns to the job they're hiring for. So they know they got the best folks in there, they know that they're qualified for the job, and what's more, they really were looking to try to increase their number of diverse qualified applicants, right? So we took that into account. Fast forward a few months, they've just brought in their first crop of bright, shiny new employees under this process. They're very happy, they're very qualified, and about half of them fall into what we would call racial and gender diverse categories. So they were happy. So in that instance, hrFIT got to be a tactical HR supplement. They've got an HR staff in place, but they can't do everything, and they can't do it all the way that they'd like. So they bring HR in for this one project. What's this all come down to? hrFIT serves as a strategic HR partner for businesses, nonprofits, public sectors, employers of all shapes and sizes. We go in there, we meet them where they're at, we find out what is the most important thing that they need to get done, and then we partner with them to find out a solution there that's going to work for their particular business, their particular nonprofit, public sector. It aligns to their mission. So what does hrFIT do? hrFIT makes businesses stronger. That's why the slogan is improving your HR core. We focus on what it is that you do, and we help you do it even better by improving your people processes. That's my 6 minutes, guys. Wow. I'll take whatever questions you got.
Erik, tell us a little bit more about your background.
Sure. I've been an HR professional for about 13 years at various levels. I was a risk management coordinator doing benefits and liability issues. Served as the assistant director of HR for a large county, had over 1,000 employees, 9 different bargaining units, and it was quite the education when it came to HR. I learned a lot that I don't think I would have gotten in that time if I were in one company that just did one thing. Before I started doing this, I was the HR director for a local school district, had over 600 employees, and never had an HR director before. And so I got to know what it's like to go to a place where there's not a lot of established HR processes and things that you need, and put those into place. And did that for about 5 years. And all the while I knew there was a fit for this kind of thing. There was a market out there and a need for this. And so that's where hrFIT came from.
Erik, I've seen several large companies that instead of hiring a professional like you, HR person, that they take a person that's in the office, moving them to a management position and say, okay, you're the HR director now. What kind of, I assume there might be a liability there, or at least they would not fare too well in a court settlement. Can you elaborate maybe
Well,
on why that's important?
Yeah, that happens a lot. You've got,
Can you repeat the question?
his question was, he's seen a lot in companies that somebody is kind of deemed the HR person, and that might not be the best strategy.
Have you ever had any training or anything like that?
Yeah, you're just You're the one who didn't have a chair when the music stopped, so you get to be HR director now, right? Yeah, that happens a lot. And the challenge there is that there is a lot that just goes into this field, like any other professional field, that somebody might not be aware of. And we're in Illinois, which has many, many layers of regulations when it comes to managing employees. And so they've got to know what pieces are in place where. You know, is this law applying to us or is not? Some of them kick in at 50, some at 15, some at 20, some at 50 employees. But then on the other side of it is, away from just the compliance, is running more efficiently. You know, you've got somebody who's trying to manage these processes that impact your whole workforce, which is to say your business. And if they aren't really up on how best to put those in place, and if they're not really vested in it, that's going to impact how well you're actually running. It's going to impact your ability to execute whatever it is that you're trying to get done. So, yeah, there's more than a few gaps with that.
How does it scale?
How's it scale? As we grow, hrFIT is going to be working with more and more independent contractors. That's the model that I'm using now. We've used a couple when I'm needed to, and continue to use those. I want to hold off on hiring a full-time staff member until I know that I need it and have the regular work. So we keep adding those folks, other independent contractors who can do more the less strategic work, the stuff that's a little bit more routine to an HR professional anyway, handbooks, job descriptions, things like that. And so I can focus on more of the strategic work. That's the plan. Thanks.
In the new world, this new model of dealing with a number of independent contractors, what are the HR challenges there?
Oh, the HR. You run into this, you know how this goes. HR, the independent contractor piece is so tricky for employers of all sizes, especially businesses, and I think especially for smaller businesses, because what we'd like to say is an independent contractor under a number of different state and federal regulations isn't necessarily an independent contractor unless it meets these specific criteria, right? You know, the classic example you run into oftentimes are with an actually construction. You know, they'll say, well, this guy is a subcontractor. He's an independent contractor. So he's not my employee, so he doesn't have all the regulations. I don't have to pay taxes on him. It's his own thing. I can cut him loose whenever I want. Well, that might be true. But what happens is oftentimes if you've got those guys who are driving a truck with your company name on it, 99% of their work comes from your company. They only use your tools. You direct them on everywhere they're supposed to go and what they're supposed to do. You know, that duck's quacking, as they say. You know, that starts to feel like an employee, and the Department of Labor, federal and state, starts to agree. So you've got to be careful when you're looking at an independent contractor status. Thanks, Bill. Doris.
Are you a PHR, SPHR yet?
Have been. Got my SPHR in 2007, I want to say, and have done that, and got the new SHRM one, SPA. What is it? The SHRM SCP, certified senior certified professional. The new one here in the last year or so. So, yeah, some HR certification. Doris is an old HR pro. She knows those HR questions to ask.
No, I forgot all of it. I don't want to look at another resume and make any time to process. Dealing with all those people.
You can do more fun stuff now.
Yeah, we have more stories.
Have you found or developed a niche in a certain industry or geographic location or something yet?
Geographically, it's pretty well been around central Illinois. I'm finding that because my background is in public sector and schools, that I'm able to partner with the public sector, especially a little more readily. But a big chunk, I'd say about half my clients right now are businesses with fewer than 50 employees. Right in that spot, they've got the need, but for some HR help, but they don't have the need for a full-time HR person to be on there, on staff. They need somebody to advise them and kind of point them in the right direction. And so that's the gap that I start to fill there.
Do you have a lot of competition, or do you think you're one of the first ones that run off on your own to do this kind of consulting?
There's some competition out there, but I haven't seen it be so strong that I'm getting moved out of different places. There's not a ton of people. I tell you, my biggest competition is probably status quo. convincing businesses and employers that they need to do this. You guys, especially small businesses, you're trying to keep your head above water. You're trying to get the things done that you need to get done, and it hasn't been a problem so far. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But the issue is that they don't see what all is potentially coming. They don't know what exposure they've already created, and you don't want when a lawsuit or the Department of Labor is knocking at your door to be the time that you realize that, oh, I should have been doing this, following this law, whatever it might be. But then the other piece is that efficiency piece. They might have something in place, but is that evaluation tool, does anybody take it seriously? Your performance evaluation tool, is it really driving the results that you want? And same thing with an interview process or a hiring process. You've seen the candidates you want to see come through the door and land in your organization. And so for a little bit of time and resources with hrFIT, we can tweak those things and set them on the right path. That tends to be the biggest competition. It's just convincing them that they should move forward.
Tell us about a time when you saved the day.
Time when I
For an
saved the
employer,
day.
Yeah, for an employer. You have any stories like that yet?
Yeah, I've got a couple like that. One was, I think one was with one of my smaller folks, and that tends to be the most fun because that's where you get to see the impacts like right away.
So how small is small? First off.
Small. This one was like 15 employees.
Okay.
So they're just starting to get there, and they had a plan of how they were going to roll something out, and they're like, we're going to go ahead and we're going to. Oh, I know it is. Let me give you a better one. This one was he's a little bit bigger. This is my 40 employee client. He's saying, look, we got to do this drug testing policy. I'm going to start with all of our new hires right now. And I said, well, why are you doing this? Well, our main customer wants us to. Okay. Have you told anybody you're going to do that yet? Well, no. Okay. You're going to go back and test these folks back here? Yeah. Did you tell them you're going to do it? No. Okay. Do you know where you're going to have them tested or what for? No. But they want drug testing, so we got to get this done. I said, let's pump the brakes. Okay. It's going to be much more important that you protect yourself, all right, and you don't get yourself in a bad spot because you just kind of started running people through drug testing. And what are you doing with that medical information that you might get back? How are you keeping track of that? Are you making sure it's really clear that that's not impacting any kind of hiring decisions that you're doing? Are you doing the testing at the right time in the process, which is to say post-offer? And anyways, we talked about all this kind of thing. I talked him off the ledge a little bit, and now we've got a plan. We're going to roll it out here in a couple of weeks, and it's going to do what he needs. The sky did not fall, and he's on a good path, and we eliminated all the exposure that he had. But he didn't realize it was there. He just said, I got to get this done. Let's get this done. But that would have been a bad way to go. A couple of weeks made a big difference for him.
Yeah, sorry. Me again. What's the difference between you and a lawyer then?
The lawyer tends to be the what and why. I tend to be the how. There's a bit of an overlap between what I can do and what a lawyer does. And I am not a lawyer. Let me make sure I make that emphatically clear, right? Mine is not legal advice. However, after a lawyer's gone through and said, here's what you need to do, here's why you got to do it, I get to come through and say, well, here's how, because there's many ways that we could put something in place, all right? And we got to pick the one that's going to work for you, your employees, your culture, that's meeting your end and your goals. That drug testing policy is kind of an example. That they know they need to put this in place, but let's stop and talk about how that happens. I mean, you could just say, this starts tomorrow. Everybody file in, sign this form that says that you know that it does. How's that going to make your employees feel, right? So instead, let's make sure we get the word out. Let's make sure everybody understands what and why this is, why we're doing it. Let's make sure that they understand what we're going to do with this information, and then roll it out that way. So that's the difference. I'm really the how to make sure that it fits well with their organization.
Are you interacting with your clients on more of a subscription basis, or without getting too much into the details of what you're doing? I mean, Can you give us share a little?
Sure. That has been the trickiest part of this whole endeavor.
Repeat the question.
It's basically how do they pay for services? How am I interacting with clients on a subscription basis, or what might it be? Right? Is that fair, Kevin? Right. So basically it comes down to I meet the clients where they're at. Some folks we do something just as a project. You know, you can bring me in, I'm going to do this, and away we go. Some places it is more of a retainer of this is what I'm your partner. We're always working together. I'm here anytime you need me. And then some places it's an hourly type fee, like for that on-call stuff. When I need you, I'll get a hold of you. So I've found it best to tailor it towards the client and their needs. There's a lot of ways we can get that done.
Eric, do you formulate company policies and help people put manuals together, or that type of thing?
Yeah, that's often one of the places where we start, is with some form of an employee handbook or personnel policies. Because the great thing about those, they are admittedly very dry, right? But there's a lot of work rules that go into that. And it forces those employers to make some decisions and think about some things they hadn't thought about before. You know, your time off policy. What kind of paid leave do you guys offer or not? Why do you do it that way? How do people ask for the leave? And how does it accrue? How do you keep track of it? Are you doing it the same way for everybody? You'd be surprised how often they aren't, which is a big problem. So that's one of the main things we do. We usually do it pretty early.
Is this something people should be thinking about, like, from day one? Or is it something people can kick the can until they get to their 48th employee? on the danger.
Right. Well, the HR guy, who's admittedly biased anyway, is going to say day one. You should be thinking about that. But there are things that, if you have one employee, come into place, right? Come into play in terms of discrimination law, things like that. There's certain segments of law. But it also is good to be thinking about this because, you know, as you grow your business, I mean, let's say you just grow it from one person to 5. You know, still now you've got a staff of 5, and you need to make sure you're treating those people fairly, that they know what's expected of them, and that all 5 of those staff members are aligned to what you want to do. You know, did you just hire somebody because I got all this work? What is that work? Why do you have that work? Is there a different way to handle that? Do you need to hire somebody on? At what level do you need to hire them on? You know, do they need to be part-time? Whatever it might be. So to the question, yeah, on some level, they should be thinking about this from day one, because practically there's stuff, even as an employer of one person, they need to know, but they also want to position themselves for when they grow down the road to make sure they have things in place like they need.
Can clients outgrow you and eventually we have to have someone sitting at a desk here 40 hours a week?
Yep, they certainly can. And usually it ends up around that kind of 50-ish mark. Some people end up going a little over that. But yeah, and I'm upfront with them about that, is that I'm not the guy who's going to be running your HR stuff, the nitty-gritty every day, because I don't think that's very cost effective for them, and I don't have that kind of time. You know, what I do is, if they get in that point, I help them set up the department going forward. You know, if we've done a lot of stuff like this with the outsourced HR strategy, we've already set them on the path. They've got a lot of the stuff they need already. So when they bring in a new person, it's essentially, we can say, you know, here you go. And then I'm here for more of this kind of stuff as an HR supplement. And when they've got an extra thing that they need, or they've got a really tricky thing. The other thing is that I've been very fortunate in that the experience I have is more at the strategic or executive level, and you don't generally get that with somebody who's coming in to do your real basic HR things. And so you get somebody who can come in and be an HR generalist, you know, who can know their stuff and run the operations of the organization. But when they need to really think strategy, that's where I can come in and really serve as a supplement to them.
Is there a point there then too where perhaps you, having worked with independent contractors, you would almost contract them out full-time? Is that kind of what you do now?
Probably not full-time, but yeah, like that's exactly what I do now when I get into spots where I need somebody who's got a different skill set, or they can just do it faster. One is like employee testing. There's lots of tests you can do out there for job applicants, or to test your current staff for job fit and stuff like that. I don't do that because there's a lot of people who already do. So I get a hold of them, and we'll contract with them on the project, and and go from there. So yeah, that's how I do it. With when I have additional workload that I need, I contract it out and let them take care of it.
With a smaller company, not having maybe an HR director and you being the person that's guiding them, and they have a constant problem with a particular employee, do they ever bring you in on a meeting to sit down and explain things, or does the boss take care of that? Where's that coming in?
I haven't had to sit in on the meeting yet. And I've had that question come up. Would you be there? Yes, I will be there. Don't worry if you want me to. Most of it's been discussions with that supervisor, or with the owner to have with the supervisor, and say, okay, here's how we should approach this. Here's the things to think about. Here's where and when to have the meeting. That kind of stuff makes a difference. And so I haven't had to sit in there yet, but I've been available. Most of it's been guiding them on how to go about it.
Tell us about a mistake you made early on.
Mistake that I made early on, underestimating how much time it would take to do some of the more routine stuff, like handbooks. I mentioned a second ago, that's something to do pretty routinely. Underestimating how much time it would take. I'm like, all right, I got these templates that I like to use. I know these are good and these are solid. We'll just boop, 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 plug these in and away we go. Well, that's why I started to really learn, how different every employer is. And you have to ask some of these questions of why are we doing things that way? And when you start getting into those kinds of discussions, which are so important, they just take longer. So that was one mistake I made, underestimating the amount of work that would take.
How did you come up with your name?
Friend of mine is a marketing guy. And so I was telling him about this, and we were kicking some things around. And he said, yeah, how about this one? I said, that's fantastic. And then I've got a family member who's in graphic design and said, hey, what's going on? Want to help me out? And she helped me out with the logo. So there we go.
That sounds good. Do you have a lawyer?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do. I got a very good lawyer. I make sure.
Because you're not a lawyer.
Because I'm not a lawyer.
Maybe one is all right.
Yep.
HR.
Yep, that's right.
To
And
protect yourself.
I do, and I've got a really strong, he's an employment law attorney.
Okay.
And it's funny because I start to find that for some of my smaller clients, they rely on their general counsel who does, whatever but it might not be employment law.
That's right.
And I uncover things from time to time where I'm like, it's not maybe how we should do this. Let's, ask your attorney to think about that. But that said, I do have an attorney. I'm not an attorney.
What kind of network have you put together for either prospecting, referrals, or things that are outside of your realm to refer out?
Do you mean how have I done that, or what does the network look like?
Both.
Or okay,
Sure.
networking face to face has been absolutely huge. Stuff like going here, different events that the Chamber of Commerce here in town might have, other speaking engagements that come about, partnering with other great companies in the area, insurance companies like Unland or Palm, if anybody's familiar with Palm or Tricon here, Peoria Area Labor Management. They've been a great partner. Any way that you can get your face out there and connect with people. I mean, that's what I've noticed too about professional services is they're buying you, right? I mean, they've got to know and trust that what you're giving them is good advice, that you know what you're talking about, you're able to pull it off. And so the best way to do that really is one-to-one interaction. So that's what it's been a lot of, getting out and meeting people. And then setting up networks wherever you can. I'm always looking for folks who could be good, independent contractors that I could resource stuff out. I'm always looking for people who would be good referral partners if they get in a spot where they have a client who could use some help.
Let's wrap it up. What can we do to help you get over your next obstacle?
One, get the word out, obviously. I think that's what everybody who comes up here asks for. The second one is kind of like I said a second ago, I'm always looking for good partners, both to help bring things in, but also to send items to, if for capacity or expertise, it's not something I can do. So if you're aware of somebody who's either runs into businesses who have tricky HR issues, or somebody who's got some kind of a skill set who'd be willing to do some stuff on the side, let me know. And I think the third thing is I'm interested in talking with other service-based entrepreneurs about this scalability question. You know, how do you grow your business? Because, you know, as a service provider, as opposed to cranking out widgets or whatever it might be, I mean, there's only so much of you to go around, right? You hit a capacity at some point. So that's what I'd be interested in too. Other service entrepreneurs, how have you grown your business? What hurdles have you run into? How have you tackled that?
It's good. Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.